Major Crime Section, in conjunction with several other areas of the service, have charged 8 men, some with multiple murder attempts, in connection with a string of high-profile shootings that plagued the northeast part of the city last year. The men also face charges in connection with carrying out these shootings in association with a criminal organization, as well as selling drugs for the benefit of a criminal organization. Under the criminal code, these charges allege the acts of violence were carried out with knowledge that the organization would benefit from these crimes. Between January 2015 and May 2016, dozens of shootings occurred between two groups of men connected to organized crime and the drug trade. Calgary saw 95 shootings in 2015, double that of 2014, with more than half related to organized crime, and 15 of those shootings resulted in homicides. These shootings predominantly occurred in the northeast quadrant of Calgary and involved a dispute over drugs with the use of guns to resolve the issue. With public safety as the service's primary goal, a major investigation and suppression effort began. Sworn and civilian members from across the service worked in coordination to bring these incidents to an end, and on Tuesday, May 3rd, 2016, police arrested 3 men without incident, and warrants were executed in 3 homes in Rundle, Sherwood, and Pine Ridge. On Thursday, May 5th, 2 men currently in custody were arrested and charged by CPS. On Monday, May 9th, 3 men were taken into custody following coordinated arrests in the early morning hours. A list of the accused and their charges are available in the City of Calgary newsroom. And the CPS continues to ask the public to be vigilant and to call police if they have any information about these crimes in our city. This can be done anonymously through Crime Stoppers or by calling the non-emergency line. The service also has a website, GRIP or GRIP, for gang reduction, intervention, and prevention, where parents, members of the public, and those involved in this high-risk lifestyle can go for help at www.cpsgrip.com. So I'll answer what questions I can, but keep in mind it's a lengthy and complex investigation with a lot of details that I may or may not have the intimate knowledge to answer, but I'll do my best.
What can you just say about the size and length of this investigation, the efforts that went into it?
It was a large-scale investigation that has taken place in response to the shootings over the last year and a half, so the investigation in itself was that long. It started out as a substantive homicide investigation and then incorporated other aspects of violence and incidents as information came forward throughout the course of that year and a bit, which ultimately led to charges that were laid. But the investigation itself continues. We're always investigating the incidents of violence on an ongoing basis, so it's not done by any means. It's just to the point where we could lay some charges.
What do you think, based on this, what difference the public will see in 2016 as opposed to 2015?
Well, we're hoping to send a message that we'll catch up to you at some point. There's always information coming forward. People's level of involvement change. There's varying degrees of cooperation and multiple investigative strategies that occur over a period of time that ultimately lead us to where we can lay some charges and hopefully keep some people in jail, which then leads to a reduction in these violent activities that affect public safety.
I mean, though, are these some of the top guys that you've laid charges against? What are we going to see in terms of a reduction in 2016?
Well, we believe we'll see a reduction in some of the violent acts. I mean, this group's responsible for several shootings based on the number of attempt murder charges. That's simplistically that number of people have been shot at, and they can't shoot people when they're in jail at the end of the day. So the more people we can put in jail and keep them there, the less you're going to see rolling around the city. It's frustrating for investigators to be dealing with the same people all the time, and it's frustrating to be laying more charges relating to violence when people are on judicial interim release for other violent offenses and recogs for violent offenses and the revolving door. It's very frustrating for investigators to really be dealing with the same people over and over and over.
So are these people, but next question. So would you say that some of these members are extremely prominent in certain organized crime rings? Like they're not just kind of taking orders, but they're actually, deciding who goes where, like big players?
Well, I think in this group, there's a bit of a hierarchy. Keep in mind, they're not overly sophisticated groups, but there is a bit of a hierarchy, and you can see that by virtue of the charges that have been laid. But there's, we believe, some direction provided.
So the release mentions the number of homicides related to this. A number of those are still unsolved. There's no arrests. What can you say about ongoing efforts in those cases?
Yeah, so the investigation, like I said, continues. We have this piece. We can lay charges, get some more people in custody, and hopefully reduce the risk to public safety. The homicide investigations continue, and we're hoping that anybody that has information or is maybe involved and was scared, now maybe might not be so scared, can come forward and help with information to hopefully resolve some of the outstanding homicides that we believe are related to this group as well.
What are some of the barriers you guys are facing? I mean, are you facing sort of reluctant witnesses or victims? What are some of the things that you're encountering that are making this extra difficult?
Yeah, it's often the lack of cooperation between witnesses and other people involved. And when you think about an incident occurs, there's a shooting, police show up, and you're tasked with putting the whole event together with no cooperation, often from the victims, if they're not killed. No other witnesses come forward, lack of independent CCTV, things like that. Investigators are tasked with trying to put together an incident with zero information and cooperation. It's very difficult, and that leads to the implementation of some investigative strategies that are very labor intensive and overall just drags out the time that a file takes to be successfully concluded.
Can you say just how these arrests are also impacting the fentanyl issue?
I'm not it will have some impact, obviously. I believe that there was a substantial amount of drug trafficking occurring within this group. We were able to employ several investigative techniques along the way to disrupt that, which has led to some drug seizures, some seizure of weapons, and along that year-long investigation, there's other enforcement activities that take place to further some files, the overarching files, and to provide some disruption to that drug trafficking activity.
Is it believed that some of these victims underestimate how serious this is? They say, "Oh no, it's okay. It'll be fine." Do you think they underestimate how big a deal this is, as far as them being shot at or whatever? Do they underestimate it?
Well, I don't know. I can't speak to what they think, but it's clear that being shot or being shot at doesn't deter that activity like you'd think for most people. Sometimes it elevates things, then there's retaliation and whatnot, but it doesn't seem to have the impacts we would hope it would.
Are these groups part of a larger network, or Calgary Police working with other jurisdictions?
Yeah, like Calgary Police Service is working all the time with other jurisdiction and other, even within the service, on varying levels of drug trafficking activity, both on the importation side and then the distribution within the city. That's ongoing all the time.
Can you speak to any sort of lessons that might have been learned from the FOBFK days that has brought you to this point? Well,
investigative tenacity for sure is important, that we stay on these individuals. It's also important to recognize the service-wide approach that we utilize, and that gang suppression occurs all the time. We're always doing something relating to gang suppression. It might not always be a large operation, but daily there's enforcement investigative activities that the service undertakes on an ongoing basis, and we just don't deal with the flare-ups when it happens. It's behind the scenes. There's always something going on to keep some pressure on groups at some level.
John, can you say anything more about these individuals specifically? Are they born and bred Calgarians? Have they immigrated here and just gotten involved in organized crime? I mean, what type, maybe to give the public a better idea of what kind of, because they're all relatively young, I mean, what kind of people are at risk of getting involved? Can you say a little bit more about these individuals specifically?
I'm not sure on the background of all these individuals. They all currently live in Calgary. I'm not sure specifically for how long, but I believe they've been in Calgary for a while. they're clearly related in various capacities. But ultimately, it speaks to like our GRIP program and getting involved with youth and younger people and preventing being associated with the group to start with, which then leads to the money and then leads to the attempts to take on more of the criminal market share in drug trafficking and that whole landscape, and then ultimately leads to conflicts and retaliation and potentially what may look like no escape for some individuals. So we're hoping that some people might take some security by the fact there's been significant arrests made here and potentially come forward with information or come forward looking for assistance to get out of the activity altogether.
Can you speak about the two groups? Because I know in some past news conferences there was talk about it was quite fluid, some of the individuals were kind of move between different groups. Can you talk about these specific ones?
Yeah, it's important to realize that it's groups, but it's not two groups, it's several groups. And people do move between groups and quite honestly move to and deal with whatever's best for them, however they can make the most money, whoever they can align with that serves their own purpose at the time, and that's where you see moving in between groups. The family relation thing's a little bit different, obviously, but we don't really see the distinction between Group A versus Group B because it is fairly fluid.
And you mentioned 95 shootings in 2015, more than half related to organized crime. So it's more than half related to these specific groups.
I don't know the exact number off the top of my head, but there's, but by virtue of the charges themselves, and that's a number of charges. Some of them we're aware of the incidents right away because the public calls in. Some are late reporting. Some we become aware of through other investigative means. But I don't know exactly if we can really, I don't think we know how many this group's responsible for. We know the ones we laid the charges for, but there could be others. And those charges may still be coming.
Are you putting any labels on these groups that we can use?
No, they're just criminal networks, and there's several of them, and their makeup is diverse.
But is everybody on this sheet all on one group?
In relation to Operation Hybrid, in this charging list, it appears that it's all one group that are related in various capacities as a family.
Well, I was just wondering, Doc, you mentioned before talking about the difference between, OLC in 2016 as compared to 2015. Does a bust like this send, do you think, a specific message to people who are in organized crime, and that maybe they might rethink their decisions or their choices? Does this have a major effect on people who are currently in and see the kinds of charges that are happening here and see that they might be at risk of that?
I don't know what effect it has on them. The effect it should have on them is that there's consequences to this, and it might not be the next day, but at some point we're going to catch up to you and there's going to be charges laid, and what seems like something you might send a message and get away with one night may lead to 25 years to life at some point. Information comes in all the time, people change, people cooperate. At some point things are going to get resolved investigatively.
Have you got other people in mind that have not been arrested yet, but you're still eyeing that could be potentially charged in connection with this operation in the future?
Yeah, there is. There's people we're aware of and still working towards. Throughout this investigation, new information comes to light. People's jeopardy changes, their involvement changes. There's information from the public. There's all kinds of things that lead us to being able to further other investigations, and that's our hope. Is this is only one piece of it, but it continues, and we can resolve some other matters as well.